This is the message that I received. A message that has been censored and scrubbed all over China. Perhaps the most alarming thing is that I received this message from people who I've always known to support the Chinese government. Almost nationalists, you could say. Hell, I even got this message from people that supported China's dictator-in-chief, Xi Jinping. This doesn't happen. You don't get people that have been brainwashed their entire lives suddenly turning on a dime and saying that it's game over for China and making plans to leave. Yes, these people are trying to leave. You don't get this unless something horrific happens. I was shocked the other day when I found out what a data broker was. There's a massive, huge, multi-billion-dollar industry that's out there to take information about you, your name, your address, your social security number, your voting status, all of your personal details, and to go sell it on to different companies or even more nefarious places like people searching websites where people can pay money to find out everything you've ever done. The good news is that today's video is brought to you by Incogni. It's fantastic because what they do, they go out there and after you give them permission, they go contact every single one of these data brokers that have been found to have your information, and they give them the legal liability to take your information away, to make sure that these horrible, nefarious websites don't have this information about you and that you're not bothered anymore. This is also going to remove you from places that have your information that are giving you junk mail or giving you targeted advertisements that you don't want, and keeping the prying eyes away from your personal information. If you're one of the first 100 people to go to incogni.com/Laowai86 and use the code Laowai86, you're going to get 20% off. I highly recommend it because you're going to limit public access to your private information, you're going to mitigate the risks of identity theft, and you're going to keep your data from being sold. Don't forget to go to incogni.com/Laowai86 and be one of the first 100 people to use the code Laowai86 to get that 20% off. Xi Jinping has broken all promises to previous leaders of China and taken on a third term, solidifying forever his role as dictator, not leader of China. I think I know why people in China are changing their tune so drastically, putting themselves out there, knowing with certainty that they will die if they stand up in public. It's simple, really. There used to be hope for China. We were all holding out. After living in China for 10 years, I watched it open up to the world under the previous leader, Hu Jintao, and then close down again under Xi Jinping. I watched China go from exciting, warm, and welcoming to paranoid, cold, and authoritarian. I've seen the entire country over a decade welcome me with open arms and then spit me out because of nationalism and brainwashing. Even me, a China watcher and an unrelenting realist, held out for hope that things would go a different way. Perhaps if China was faced with economic downturn, the only justification, by the way, for China's horrible and draconian rules, maybe with economic downturn things would change. No. Faced with certain demographic collapse due to years and years of population mismanagement and the one-child policy, certainly that would change the political situation. No. Maybe faced with the world's most inane and ridiculous lockdowns that still happen today, where people starve, lose their jobs, and children are taken from their families while people go mentally insane from being locked in their apartments for months, cut off from the world? Even then, no. After all of this week still came. The China 20th Party Congress. 1 week where the next leader is chosen by the Communist Party, and China gets the opportunity to change it up just a little bit with some reforms and some new leadership. No. It was a bloodbath. Xi Jinping not only took the helm as dictator for life, bucking the term limitations put into place by Deng Xiaoping, China's second leader, who really wanted to avoid another disaster from someone like his predecessor, Chairman Mao, who killed tens of millions of people in modern history. But Xi Jinping also wiped out any and all competition within the party. Everyone that challenged his rule was replaced.
的请举手。
没有，
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 没有，通过。
We all watched it happen. A public display was even made, where Hu Jintao, China's last leader before Xi Jinping, is alleged to have been purged. The reformists, the people within the party that might want to change things, the people that have been honest to the world about how China still is very much in poverty outside of the city centers. Li Keqiang, for example, China's vice president, for lack of better terms, who is well loved within China, was removed. And Xi Jinping's loyalists were added to positions of power with little rhyme or reason, other than their personal connections. This is a dangerous game. And here's why. China's government has always been bad on the human rights and personal freedoms front, let's make no mistake here, but things were changing fast. On paper, China's laws were pretty draconian, but when I lived there from 2008 to 2018, the period under Hu Jintao was one where you knew things were changing for the better. You tolerated the censorship, and you tolerated the religious persecution to a certain extent because those North Korea-esque laws were enforced less and less each day. In fact, everyone thought, including myself, that China would end up liberalizing into a normal country over time. China's leader, Hu Jintao, the guy that got forcefully removed from the party Congress, who was happy to work with the West. In fact, he was a well-educated hydro engineer with a photographic memory, and he came from very humble beginnings. His talents as a smart and pragmatic engineer is the reason that he was selected to lead the country under the Communist Party of China. He was no saint, but let me tell you, he led China through its golden years, and the more hands-off approach is why China gained wealth and prosperity. It turns out, when you let talented and hardworking people like the Chinese to do what they want to do, they do a good job. Surprise, surprise, eh? Xi Jinping was actually groomed within the party because he was a safe choice. Everyone just wanted to see China get more wealthy and people to get more and more freedoms, as long as there was no challenge to the party. People were happy to let things be. People were happy to kind of let China be what it was and to grow as it was naturally. You see, there's two big groups within the party. Although it's a one-party state, there's something called the Shanghai clique, and they're the ones that wanted to get rich in the coastal areas. And then there's the Communist Youth League, the ones that wanted to share the wealth more. They disagreed a lot, but those butting heads and the disagreement is kind of what led China to have a semi-functional government. It was a government that within itself had a small level of checks and balances because there were two cliques that butted heads and they disagreed on lots of things. This struggle of power is a good thing. We were all excited to hear that the next leader was going to be another hands-off guy that was going to let China keep growing. And he was happy to let China interface with the West. Xi Jinping really looked like a safe bet. Boy, were we wrong. There's definitely some buyer's remorse amongst the party cliques when they chose Xi Jinping. It turns out, when you pick a leader that isn't educated and who was born already as a princeling into a family that already held top positions in the government and has little to no experience with anything surrounding the things that matter in running the country, it's a disaster. Xi Jinping purged any and all competition. He removed anyone that would hold him back, and he wiped the party of the few checks and balances that it had. China has now become a North Korea-style country. Xi Jinping has destroyed the very idea of China. China could have been a world leader if it continued on this trajectory. But Xi Jinping needed to be a hero. He needed to go down in history for something incredible. He wasn't satisfied with just being the leader and let the economy and the people of China to take it where it needed to go. From zero COVID crackdowns to taking back Taiwan to removing any and all free speech and international dialogue, Xi Jinping would rather plunge this world into war and turn his back on the West and proceed to destroy and command developing countries for his own gang, all while cutting his own people off from the rest of the world forever. You see, China has now entered its darkest period since Chairman Mao. And it's not just the Chinese who will suffer this time. The world is going to be brought into conflict because one man's power went unchecked. And so that's why I got this message over and over again. That's why people that were previously nationalists and previous Xi Jinping supporters are very worried. That's why people that were ready to back China no matter what are trying to run away and asking me how. The proud people that told me to prepare for China's rise and China's takeover are scared. For lack of better words, China is doomed. The economy is crashing and China is now acting belligerent. People are scared that a Cultural Revolution 2.0 is brewing, similar to what Mao Zedong did. You know what? I think they're right. A lot of you have been asking me, hey, why don't you cover this brand new news topic? Why don't you cover this thing that just happened? They open the headlines and they say, oh, I really want to see Law86's take on this. Well, guess what? I have a news show with Serpent ZA every single Friday. We've been doing it for a while now. It's the best. I guarantee you guys will really like it. It's called The China Show. You guys tune in live every Friday. It's all the latest and greatest news coming out of China. It's stuff from Chinese people that we have on the ground. It's stuff from headlines. It's analysis of what China's doing in the world. But not only that, it's not just a live show. It goes up afterwards, so you guys can watch it indefinitely. It's not only fun, it's really informative, and I really, really would appreciate you guys going over there and subscribing to that channel and making sure that you're part of The China Show.